draft letter from the Association of Rural Town Councils. And in all honesty, I was like, okay, this somebody put a lot of time in reviewing that renewable energy. And I looked at that and says, well, let me download it and I'll read it. And when it got to 999 pages, I second thought about that.
999?
Oh, it's 70-something.
Yeah, 76, I think. Or
It was
77.
well, when I found it online, unless,
That's the EIR, but
Right.
okay, yeah. No, it was 999 pages. And I said, you know, I'm going to wait and see if Jackie read this. So, Jackie, did you read this?
yeah, I haven't read the 999-page version. I think that's the draft EIR, and that's on my agenda to read for the next 2 weeks.
So this draft letter from the Association of Rural Town Councils, they went through it a lot. I mean, this is quite a bit of information, a lot of quotes and a lot of statements in here and a lot of issues. So I was wondering if you're going to go through this, they want to know if this letter here is a draft, is good to go out from all the councils. And I was wondering if you'd like to review this for us and just see. I know we can send our own answer to it, or if you're going to do it as an individual, which you do sometimes. But would you mind going through this and just?
Me, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure I.
Jackie.
Well, I can, and I've already gone through it.
You did go through this.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
And in fact, I have an electronic copy here. I had sent my own personal comments about a week and a half ago, and to the county, and then I sent them also to all of you, and to the Association of Rural Town Councils, as well as other residents who asked. Susan took a lot of those comments and put them in there.
So they.
Yes, so they have all of my comments in there.
Okay.
And she added comments about undergrounding gen tie lines. A gen tie line is a generation tie line, a line, transmission line that connects from the generators, the wind power, the solar power, to actual transmission lines. So she wants them. So I'm just going to give you a synopsis of the difference between what I submitted and what ARTC has drafted.
Okay.
They also are concerned about guy wires, which I did address. They're very concerned that minor conditional use permits, which are what basically the thing, if an energy developer wants to avoid any of the compliance requirements in the draft renewable energy regulation, they can do it by a minor CUP, and that minor CUP cannot be appealed to the Board of Supervisors, which is unconscionable, because a CUP is a discretionary action, and it always has to be appealable to the elected officials, because they're the ones who ultimately have to approve it in the first place. So I agree with that aspect, and I hadn't considered that. They also objected to motion sensor lighting. They had a lot of language in there about issues related to impacts on birds and bats. In fact, the California Energy Commission has a document out, a report that says you should do these things to protect birds and bats. The most recent version of this, which came out only on the 20th of February, deletes all reference to the CEC report, which is a problem. And that's about it. So everything else that I had included with respect to noise, my big concerns were noise. They issue a 70 decibel, I think, noise ordinance at the closest house to any small-scale wind energy project. I said it needs to be a fence line provision, and it needs to be more like 60, because the 70 decibels is about the sound of a dryer in your house running 3 feet away. So it's pretty loud. And they consider it a single event when we all know it's going to be continuous. They have no provisions in there to monitor on a real ongoing basis, so that when the bearings start wearing and they get much louder, there's no way to catch that. And they have no noise condition requirements on utility scale wind towers, which are the 500-foot ones. They only have noise provisions applied to small scale wind, which is a big problem. My other concerns were
let me just get this straight.
60 decibels, established as 60 decibels.
But the decibels to the closest resident, so they're really only protecting existing structures and residences.
Exactly.
But if someone owns land and wants to build a house,
I pointed that out. I said, you could make the house unlivable. So it needs to be a fence line limit, and it needs to be much less than 60, because rural communities are 40 to 45.
And when you say fence line, you mean basically a property line? Is that?
Well, the fence line of the wind developer. So at the fence, it can't exceed that limit.
Okay.
And it still needs, in my opinion, to be more like 50 or 45. Because every 10 decibels is a doubling of sound. So if you're at 45 and they're allowed to go to 60, that's a tripling of this ambient sound that you're used to. And that's a significant impact. So anyway, that was, there are specific provisions in there that say if the CSD has requirements, they have to comply with the requirements, unless those requirements conflict with this ordinance, in which case the ordinance wins. And I said, that's ridiculous, because any developer who wants to come in and not comply with the CSD can go through the variance process. Well, so can any developer. We're talking towers that are 500 feet high, okay? And then it has all this language about ridgeline protection provisions, and it's going to protect the ridgelines. But those provisions only apply to small scale wind and solar and utility scale solar. So the large scale solar wind projects, the 500-foot towers, have no requirements to comply with any ridgeline protection provisions. And any ridgeline protection provisions within the CSD are avoided, okay? The other, there's a lot of problems with it.
Did the gentleman's response to you about your two questions answer your questions adequately?
Well, I saw that Jay Lee sent me an email today, but I was out most of today, so I didn't get a chance to read it. I asked him, the two questions I did ask is, Acton's ridgeline protection provisions are not mapped. They're simply described. Acton's ridgelines, significant ridgelines, consist of the contours that surround it, blah, blah, blah. So they're not mapped. So I was concerned that since they're not even mapped, even the minimal ridgeline protections wouldn't prevail. What did you see?
Yeah.
Did he say what the answer to that was? So I wanted an interpretation from the county saying specifically.
Those are his two. He's got more verbiage.
Okay, so here's my answer to your question. Are these utility scale wind facilities are subject to ridgeline protection provisions, so we believe this question is resolved. But they're not. If our CSD doesn't have mapped ridgeline, significant ridgelines, then there's no protections. And I looked at the ownership on the Sierra Palomas up, and some of that's BLM land, but a lot of it's privately held. And although this question seems to be resolved as well, the draft REO actually includes maximum number and separation requirements. Well, that's just how many. I asked the question, why is it that somebody couldn't put a 25-foot house on a ridge line, but you can put multiple 500-foot towers? And so this was his answer. Well, there are limits on number and separation. That doesn't answer the question. So anyway,
That's been a problem for quite a while back.
So I guess the question really comes down to is, you sent off one letter, which is one front of protection for us.
As a citizen.
As a citizen. And it's still, sometimes we are on your coattails, Jackie.
No, but I want to make it clear, I did it
No,
all
I
now.
understand that, but as this one here for Association of Rural Town Councils, I mean, it's always nice to have more strength in numbers. And I've read through this, and the part that wasn't Greek to me still sounded good, but there was a lot of Greek, which you've explained some of it. So I guess we should see, is there any recommended changes to this, or is this something?
I have two questions, I think a couple of questions on it.
Okay.
One, it looks like the RTC's already sent the letter.
No,
They have not.
no, this
Okay.
just came out on Friday.
Do they want us to be listed as a party to the letter, or to send a separate letter?
No, they would like to know if the town council wants to be a signer block on that letter.
Okay.
I believe at this point their plan is to hand deliver it to the hearing on Wednesday, or send it tomorrow. I will call Susan as soon as I get home tonight.
If that is the case, I would be very supportive of that, because I did read the entire document
Okay.
and understand at least most of it. And it seemed that it made a lot of very good points. Yours and theirs, everybody's combined. It's an excellent letter.
So yeah, I'm comfortable with
agree.
it.
I agree.
There is one other thing I do want to point out that was in my letter and they echoed in this one. This ordinance allows small scale solar to occupy 2.5 acres. Now that might sound like a really good thing, however, these projects, especially in an area like Acton, do create glare. I know they're photovoltaics, but they're still
Yes.
glass, and there's glare problems. And for the record, according to SERI, the Solar Energy Research Institute, now called AMO, that 2.8 acres generates 1 gigawatt hour per year of electricity. This is nothing more than 75 homes. So one small agricultural residence does not need 2.5 acres of solar to generate their own.
They did
On-site
address that in there, didn't they?
No,
Right?
no, they allow 2.5 acres. You mean does the ATC?
In the letter, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's,
Yeah, okay, yeah,
so
good, they addressed
that
that
was a
as
big
well.
problem. And they allow small-scale wind to be 50 kilowatts. Well, you look on the California Energy Commission website, that's considered a medium-scale utility wind turbine. So, yeah, it's big. So I did those, I'm adding, I'm sorry, but those are the two big concerns I had. But I agree with you, I think we should support this letter.
Absolutely.
And we should send somebody to the hearing, more than one somebody, because there's a lot to say, and they're only gonna give you 30 seconds to say it, so.
Well, I agree that we got to support that letter. Because this is going on, it's just too much. For what, if we let them go, we got a problem.
And I didn't see any mitigation requirements. They could decimate 500 acres in Acton without any of the set-aside that they're requiring of the Lasloviches, up to 2-to-1 set-aside ratio. No, they don't.
I know, but last one was another whole.
No, I'm just saying that it's
Yeah.
like, so
Understand.
anyway.
So would someone like to make a motion to?
I make a motion, we vote to be a signer on the ARTC letter.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
It's passed.
You have opposed? Just gotta make sure.
Why should I?
Nobody wants, you gotta ask or someone say, well, you didn't ask.
All right, Jackie, correspondence, would you like to go ahead and just send a quick note off to them?
Yeah, I'll call Susan as soon as I leave.
Okay, so we'll sign her up now. All right, there's a couple of other correspondences, these should be quick. This one here was from Barbara, I hope I pronounced this right, Fillet, and I responded back, so it's just more or less for information for everyone. She had asked about, can you tell me the minimum parcel size for Acton properties? My family owns an A1 parcel in Syracuse of 5 acres. We'd like to divide it to 2 acres and a 2.91. Would this be okay? Can you direct me to code? So I had emailed her back and said that planning department would have all that information and that some of the zonings and such had changed recently and she should check with herself. And then she called back and says, well, I live in Santa Monica and I'm not close to anything. I said, well, go to Los Angeles. and then she emailed back again. And so I sent her my phone number and then she called and then I went over everything with her. So hopefully she'll get that worked out. But there was that correspondence at first. Then there was another correspondence which blew me away. And I think we need to look into it more. And this came from, and Mike Hughes was part of this too. And who was this from? Mike at first. Alan Laslovich.
Laslovich, yeah.
Laslovich. Did
Yeah.
anyone read that email that he had sent to us? I mean, I sent it.
A couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
A couple of weeks ago, and I've never heard anything about this. This is almost like the SAA requirements.
It's a Joshua tree ordinance.
Yeah.
I believe it is. Juniper tree ordinance. And Norm was going to be checking into it, but I don't see him at the.
There's no juniper ordinance that's been adopted that has even been drafted.
If you read his correspondence, he's being used as a guinea pig for this ordinance and he's being required to set aside because of that.
Juniper woodlands mitigation.
And I agree with you, I've never heard of it before either.
No.
It sounds like the
Not an ordinance.
SCA, it
Yeah.
sounds like the SCA
It's
requirements,
yeah.
remember?
This all started about 10 years ago, 12 years ago, when a guy named Daryl Kautnick was running regional planning. And he was holding up all minor land divisions of 5 acres because of species he thought were there, which they weren't.
Right.
And so it has slowly progressed to become now where you have to set aside, even though you're not in an SCA. By the way, residences in SCAs don't even have to do
I
that.
know, I understand.
Right.
But Alan's being used as a test case for this.
Well, it's a policy, it's not an ordinance.
I
And so we
understand,
need to
but
get-
he's being told, that's why it was, sent out, that he's being used and it's supposedly this planner is saying it's going to be applied to all of Acton.
Well, then the town council needs to ask for a copy of this policy, and we need to bring it to the board of supervisors, because here's the way it works. The county cannot have a policy that is not rooted somewhere in code. And if there's no code that
Understand?
makes this possible, then there's no policy that can be implemented.
Understand? That's why Alan brought it to us, because he's extremely frustrated on a simple split that was approved years ago. They're still dragging it out for him.
Yeah, and in basic terms for people that are here, if I can, and Mike, you read the letter too, and I think Jackie was on board too, but it seemed like he wants to split a parcel, and because he's developing, say, 2 or 3 acres, he then needs to find someone else who has put up 2 or 3 acres of their land that they don't want to develop, and you don't buy their property, but you're going to pay this gentleman for him to go now record something against his property that will never develop that 3 acres. Is not
Kind of like the energy offsets.
Yeah, so
reserved on his own property.
So if you want to develop 3 acres, you have to pay somebody else for 3 acres elsewhere. That has to be significantly environmentally important.
And as Jackie said, we've never seen any official document that says that is in existence. And I referred it to Norm, I believe, at the last meeting, and he was supposed to do some research on it and let us know, because he had not heard of it either.
And he had stated that from what he was finding, that it was going to be an additional $100,000 for him to just develop this area. And it wasn't, you know, most of the previous building codes and such were based on the square footage of your structures. And this now is being based on the square footage of displaced natural habitat.
Yeah.
So it's your structure, it's then your fire clearance, it's then the driveways and roads to get to your property, it's your doghouse sitting over here. And when it's all added up, a 2,000 square foot home may take, you know, 3 acres to develop with whatever you're doing, and then you have to go purchase this 3 acre, or this, not purchase it, you're actually paying this other person, and then he'll record that he'll never do it. So I guess someone that owns a worthless mountain that you can never build on has now found a gold mine. And he can say, sure, it's a sheer cliff.
It's $800,000.
Yeah, and now it's 800,000 that he
It's a
purchased.
taking, it's a form of taking. It's not legal because there's no regulation.
Well, I'd be interested to see how this pans out. And, I just thought I'd mention it.
Regional
While we're there,
I
I-
suggested is somebody, and I can't be me because I've got too many things to do, call regional planning, get a copy of that policy and send it out to all of us. It has to be a written policy.
Jackie, did somebody
Just make up. a
Well,
verbal one.
that's the point. If
I
there
will-
is
I
no
will
written
follow up
policy,
with
then it's
Norm.
easier to fight.
I'll follow up with Norm with a phone call and
Okay,
see what he's found out about it, and I've got a good relationship with Alan too.
okay.
Just simple split, he's been,
It's,
What we
it's,
say?
he's got like 40 acres and he wants to make like 3 9-acre parcels or
I
something.
know,
I don't know.
and he even cut it down to less.
It's
this last
huge
time, they're
parcels,
still
it's stupid.
dicking around.
Yeah.
We got another problem, Mike. Jackie, did somebody contact you about a zone change?
Yes,
It had been quite a while back from, say he had 20 acres, what was it? Just in front of the, where these apartments are.
yes.
Yeah.
Did
I talked
somebody
to him
call you?
today.
Because I couldn't figure out what the heck he was talking about when talking about R3 and so on, when they
So
were
he
changed.
he thought it
Had
had
20,
changed, right?
20-foot piece, that's what it was, 20 foot.
He had an art sheet, whoever, the lady, it was a lady I spoke to. Her client has land that was zoned R3 under the old plan, and then it went to A1 because it's empty, and R3 means multifamily residence, which doesn't work in Acton, we have 1 and 2
No.
acre lots. So when I talked to her, I said, well, look, as far as I know, because this community has said for 10 years, however many years, 10 years, whatever zone commercial now, just don't expand it beyond that. And so, since it was zoned R3, it went to A1, so
Yeah, well,
And I went to
And I was never aware there were any lots that were still zoned R3
Well-
that
Oh,
didn't
yes.
have something on it,
there were
it
like
was,
5 that I am aware of.
but they're all changed now.
They're all
it's
A1.
in front of, in front of those apartments over
Yeah.
there,
Go to the
is
west,
where they're at.
That's
to the
right.
west.
Yeah.
Slightly
He does
west.
have a
And there's-
20-foot
there's
strip
He had a 20-foot
that is commercial.
that was commercial,
As an easement, access.
and so then they decided that, now this is what he was telling me, I was so darn busy when he was there, that I just kind of passed over it, I've been so busy. But, and Elizabeth told him to call you, I think, and,
I got a call.
Well,
but it was it's way back, it was
Yeah.
when those apartments were built, and then he had ended up buying it at a piece. And I got confused on what he was trying to do. He was trying to, it sounded like to me that he was trying to get this zone when it really should not be.
Well, I did check this. I checked for that whole area, the current, under the current general plan, not the new one, where the commercially zoned property boundary was. And it is exactly the same now as it was then. That did not change. So there hasn't been any property that's been rezoned from commercial to A1. The boundaries are the same from where commercial was before and where it is now. So if he owns 10 feet of that, then he still owns 10 feet of commercial. But the R3 to the north of it is now like either A2 or A1. I can't remember which one it is. And it's between the apartments and the existing commercially zoned strip. I told the woman I spoke with today, Shane?
It's Shane Belinsky,
Shane,
and
thank you.
it's Bob Crossan's property.
Okay.
And it's,
I just talked to her, I don't know who
and
owns
it's
it.
the piece of property directly behind I've Been Framed.
Yes, exactly.
But he says that there's, and I haven't had time to check it because of what I was doing for the last 2 weeks, but he's been to my office 2 or 3 times. Shane has been there. Bob is a retired realtor, okay, and he's got some pretty serious health issues right now. So he's asking for help from the community. As he understood it, it was zoned commercial. I haven't had time to check one thing. He says a part of it is commercial and a part of it was R3.
Well, all I know is based on, I looked at the map of where the commercial line is now and where it's going to be, and that line has not moved. So it's all still commercial from that line south. Above it was zoned R3. And that's now A1.
Yeah,
in the new plan. It's still R3 right this second, but
he claims that they changed it back to commercial along with that frontage that he has with the 20 feet.
well, I do know this, that at one point, about 6 years ago, the county came, or maybe it was, I don't know, sometime in the last 5 or 6 years, the county came, one of their zoning maps doubled, almost tripled the total amount of commercially zoned property in the Crown Valley Road area. And this community was very upset about that, because it was like 40 acres of new zoned commercial land. And so what everybody said, it wasn't just the town council, it was all these public meetings we went to, was if it's zoned commercial now, it needs to not, it can stay commercial, even with the new. The only exception, and I told Miss Shane, I'm sorry. Shane, I told her the only exception of which I'm aware was on that archery property, where it was zoned C3DP for the archery use, and they never did anything with it. So we asked that to be reverted. That's the only place where I'm aware of commercially zoned property did not retain its commercial status in the new plan.
So it's stated R3?
No, it's going from R3 to A1, so
To
it is being
A1.
changed.
Okay,
yes.
so then what happened to that?
No, that's what right this very second, it's R3. When the new plan comes in, it's A1.
So here's what we really need to do, because we don't want this just one letter to drag on. So I'm going to read it, and if anyone has any...
Do you have the latest copy?
I do have the latest copy as of a couple hours ago.
And it does reflect, as Mike asked, it to reflect what we talked about on Saturday. And a key part, my perspective, of what we talked about on Saturday is every place where you have it above ground, it doesn't need to be. And it's engineered specifically to go below ground exactly at the forest boundary, so you can do a better job engineering it. So
Okay. Well,
that you try.
let me read it, and then we'll open it for discussion amongst us. We'll make a few changes, and then hopefully we can just get this finalized so we can get it sent off. So, the Acton Town Council opposes the placement of any high-speed rail corridors within any portion of Acton. Furthermore, the Acton Town Council finds that the above-ground placement of high-speed rail alignments within Acton will create significant impacts that cannot be mitigated and which will result in the destruction of numerous rural, residential, and equestrian neighborhoods. The Acton Town Council further finds that the placement of high-speed train corridors underground away from homes and residential well systems will result in fewer impacts on the community of Acton. Given the topography of Acton in the vicinity of the 14 freeway, a high-speed train corridor that is entirely underground, away from homes and wells, could easily be devised and feasibly constructed. There is no reason to place the tracks above ground through this area. Given the topography of Acton on the vicinity of the Angeles Forest Highway, a high-speed corridor that is entirely underground, away from homes and wells, could easily be devised and feasibly constructed. There is no reason to place the tracks above ground through this area. Given the topography of Acton in the vicinity of the Aliso Canyon area, a high-speed train corridor that is entirely underground, away from homes and wells, could easily be devised and feasibly constructed. There's no reason to place the tracks above ground through this area. Given the topography of Acton in the vicinity of Arrastre Canyon and Bootlegger Canyon, I hope I said that right, a high-speed train corridor that is entirely underground and away from the homes and wells could easily be devised and feasibly constructed. There's no reason to place the tracks above ground through these areas. Over the last year, the community of Acton has presented these indisputable facts to the California High-Speed Rail Authority on multiple occasions. Nonetheless, recent corridor proposals make it quite clear that the authority intends to decimate Acton neighborhoods by maximizing above-ground routes through Acton's residential areas, while simultaneously protecting adjacent federal lands by placing routes underground wherever they traverse the Angeles National Forest. These facts are demonstrated by the authority's draft routes provided in February 2015, which are clearly contrived to go underground precisely at the ANF boundary. The Acton Town Council declares that the California High-Speed Rail Authority has heretofore, these words you're putting in there, failed to develop any reduced impact route alternatives for the community of Acton. Despite clear and overwhelming evidence that such alternatives are technically feasible and logistically viable, the Rail Authority is hereby notice that such failures constitute substantial violations of state and federal statutes, including but not limited to the California Environmental Equality Act, also known as CEQA, and the National Environmental Policy Act, known as NEPA. To rectify these violations, the Acton Town Council insists that the authority develop underground route alternatives which avoid residential areas within the community of Acton for both the 14 freeway corridor and the Angeles National Forest corridor, and both of these alternatives be studied in the combined environmental impact report. The environmental impact study that will be issued for the Palmdale Burbank HSR segment. I believe the last comment I'd seen was that we need to just include in this paragraph, I believe, commercial also, because farming, some people partial.
Yeah, the only recommendation I had was on the first page, paragraph 1, the last sentence. It should state, and away from homes and residential / agricultural well systems. With that one word addition.
From residential and agricultural?
Could be / residential / agricultural well systems be the least change in it, and that would make it complete. And the rest of it I have absolutely no problem with and support it.
Okay.
Well, when I think everybody was there at that meeting. And one of the things that I talked to them about, and I was explaining to them where they're talking about in Aliso Canyon. And so they were supposed to get a hold of me and talk and make an appointment with me to show them what I'm talking about. They said, these people have not been here and looked at any damn thing here. They've done it all from a map, and I don't care what they say, they don't understand what's there. If they would move that property, their line, just a little bit south, they'd go right straight through and go clear to Santa Clara Divide and out the other end. It wouldn't bother any of us in this community. Now, I talked to the other night when we met with Lackey, representative the other night, and he told
George Andrews.
And he told me that he was going to email them today, because he was when he talked to them, his understanding was that they would get back to me immediately. And that didn't set very good with him the other night. And so we'll see where he goes with that. But evidently with what we had, the politicians that we had there and the papers that we had and everything, that bothered them a lot. So now whether we'll get anywhere with this, I don't know. But anyway, they were supposed to contact me and then we'd make some type of a date.
I do want to point out something though, Ray, and this is the map, Mike's picture of the map, this is the line they drew. This alternative that they threw at us a week ago still completely messes up with the Angeles National Forest groups, the folks who live on A&F.
Right.
And the problem I have is that if they go straight down, they will go right to the A&F. They need to cut far to the east to avoid completely Acton's boundaries. So the reason I laid out each area that's currently above ground as a separate paragraph was because this doesn't fix the problem still. It still leaves an area of heavily impacted, unacceptably impacted. So.
Well, I was.
So now wait a minute. Now what do you mean by it doesn't affect that?
No, it leaves everybody along the Angeles Forest Highway still in the same boat.
The Soledad Pass area, Juniper Ridge, all those
5 miles of a, someplace 60-foot high dirt wall, and the infrastructure is still there. It doesn't save them.
Well, we talked about that. We talked about this before. That you'd have to go further east.
Right. But they literally, but they've never. We've
And
asked them for almost a
yeah.
year to go further east, and they've refused to do it. So at least put it underground away from homes.
What I have in mind of talking to them is that that's where we have to go. We have to go east some from that.
Right,
As
through
a
the ridge,
position-
but
as
they're
a
not, they
position-
didn't say that.
And my argument was, and this is what happened to me when I talked to Knight the other night, which I was polite and didn't get into an argument with him, but he made a comment to me that underground is so expensive. Well, okay, my piece of property is a hell of an expense to me. I'll lose it.
Let me
So
just
what-
go back though about this meeting and stuff, because when Jackie and I had gone to the meeting 2 months ago, was it 6
With
weeks
the
ago?
engineers?
With the engineers.
Yes.
They had said, well, they just draw the line on the paper, and so I had said, and it's a fine line because the general consensus is we don't want to give them access to our property with biologists and such, but then on the other hand, I agree with Ray that we need to show them and educate them sometime on things. So
I don't educate you.
So I put it out there, I said, if you guys need a tour of the far eastern route, then I can show you what you're looking at, because you're drawing the line right through a floodplain, and that was my property, and everything in the Ravina area. So I left it there, and that was fine, and then actually it was the day of the town council meeting last time, there was a bunch of emails. I was driving back from Las Vegas, I didn't see it till the following day. They sent an email and said, we may be able to do this tour on the day of the meeting, that Saturday. And they said, would that work? And I said, that would be okay, let me know. And then it was a day or so before I got an email from the 2 engineers, one, Carlos, and Rick, I don't know his last name. Simon. And he says, well, can we do it after the meeting? And I says, okay. So after the meeting, Michelle then walked over with Rick and one Carlos and says, I want to go too. I said, all right. So we got to the road by my house, and they were in their higher-end cars and electric cars and stuff, and they parked on the dirt road. And they jumped in my truck, and the first thing is I was driving across the riverbed and going down in the lower section of Bootlegger, and the dirt was up about 5 feet, and they says, do you guys cut this road through here? And I says, no, this is how high the water runs. The river cut this through here. And they were unaware of this. So then when we took them around, I took them around, and I took them up on the ridge where they could see where the train was going to cut through. And, they're unaware of how things were running, and again, the floods, and where it was going to go through the mountain, and the power lines. And then they had their little powwow outside of my truck, and what I did overhear them saying was that we really need to investigate that route farther east. So it let me know that these lines we're drawing aren't permanent, and they are starting to listen, and we need to keep pushing them as far east as we can go.
Well, I agree.
But we do have to keep in mind that.
And that's why I'm sorry, let me just finish real quick. And that was why that day at the meeting when you said, well, they need to come out and look at your house, I was like, they're here. This is what they set aside.
No way I could make it. I was that afternoon.
But I would stay on them about it.
Oh,
Yeah, but I think when we've got the politicians, most of them, and what we have to drum in their head what it's gonna cost them to put something in like what they're talking about doing, if we get them to go underground all the way, that's a hell of a lot better than the kind of money that it's gonna cost this community by going partly under and partly out. We need to go all the way. And if we can go further east, we're so much better off.
I think we all agree on that, but this declaration as a position statement, and that's how it's designed to be, is our position on the project right now. The first sentence, the Acton Town Council opposes the placement of any high-speed rail corridor within any portion of Acton, period. Then it goes on about the underground being less intrusive, but I believe this, in the way it's written, is exactly what we all feel. It needs to be moved on.
I hope what we had last Saturday, for example, with that group that has that lawsuit and this stuff, that goes through. But we actually have to take it upon ourselves and have it all set up.
To keep
so that
fighting.
they-
This is one step.
Let me just lay out a couple of things, because a lot of things have been talked about. Okay, they frequently hold the football for us and we come and kick it. I get that. But they have said, you know, we're like Lucy and Linus over and over, but they have said, and I think it's foolish for us to not take them at their word, that their supplemental alternatives analysis report, the final one, is coming out in May, and those alignments in that report is what they're going to consider in the EIR. And so, given that, it is sort of the last chance we're going to have before the EIR comes out to get these underground routes put down. And if we don't have it in writing before, and I mean 2 months before, like we are now, the SAA comes out, then they're not going to have time to get that in place. And I don't think they're going to slow their schedule. We shouldn't assume they're going to slow their schedule down for us. So this makes it clear in writing as a comment.
Okay.
And this is what the lawsuit would be on. The other thing is, you know, if there ever was a lawsuit, the other thing I really, just take 2 seconds more, what we're fighting here right now is not anything other than the placement of a line. That line is going to be drawn no matter what happens with the Prop 1A, because high-speed rail existed long before Prop 1A, and it's going to exist long after these guys kick Prop 1A in the teeth. I am entirely behind what Hanford's doing, but right now, we have to worry about the line that's being drawn in our community.
Well, let's just take a step right now. Does someone want to make a motion to approve this with the change that we've added agricultural well systems?
I would make that motion, yes.
Just before we do that, let me make one statement. We do this, doesn't mean we don't keep pushing them further east.
Never stop.
Okay? So this is our position, but our activity is every meeting, everything we do, east, east,
Absolutely.
east, out of Acton.
Out of Acton.
Absolutely.
Which correlates with sentence number 1.
Exactly.
Yep.
So now,
All right.
Right.
Yeah, because
Make a motion.
it-
One second.
I mean,
I second it.
they don't give a damn what it's costing the rest of us. And I mean, the amount of money that it's gonna cost us is a lot of money.
Everyone for it?
We have a second, who seconded it?
I seconded it.
Thank you.
Everyone for it?
Aye.
Anyone against it? Okay, so this is, that's you.
So how will we get this to be able to be
You'll have
signed?
to get to us,
Well, we can go
With
ahead
the
and sign the second
corrections and
page,
go
and I
from
can
there.
print out a new first page, because it's not gonna change the format,
Okay.
right?
Yeah, and
So-
Stowe gonna be in town to sign the document. I know he's busy right now tonight, but do we know if he's gonna be in town within the next day or so to sign it?
I did it all in alphabetical order, by
I
the way.
think he's only gone a day here and a day
That's what I was
there.
thinking.
So he,
So we can probably, after we sign it, give Thor a call and have
Okay,
him sign
do
it
you want
within a day. I'll take care of it. Sure.
Yeah, after I fixed it.
okay,
One
we're
or
gonna try and move along quick. Update on the 501c3, C4 liability insurance. I finally got 2 quotes back. The liability insurance, one was $1,200, the other one was just under $900. The one under $900 was not including us as board members. The one for $1,200 did include us. I'm getting some clarification back on that, and hopefully by the next meeting, we'll be able to take a look at the policy, make sure it includes everything that we want, and go forward with that. And I was waiting to pull the trigger on the starting the 501c4, just because the purpose was to also have us covered with insurance. So if we weren't gonna get insurance, because it was taking so long to get feedback, why would we do the C4? But since that's happening, I pulled the trigger on the 501c4. Michael Hughes will be the liaison with the attorney. We'll all have some input as things proceed, but that should be transpiring here in the next week or so.
Is that Mr. Fink?
Yes, Mr. Fink.
It will be an essential component here that we get our fundraising committee up to speed.
Yes. We will start with committees, planning, coordination, trails, open space, Jack Planera, recreation.
I think we've handled all of it, except for, are we gonna send one or more reps to the Regional Planning Commission to present our position? Hearing in Antelope Valley on Wednesday on the.
I was already attending, I've already calendared it for myself, so I could hand that to them if you'd like me to.
Well, I think Susan's going to, but if the town council's gonna specifically send somebody to represent their positions,
Well,
more than one person.
I was hoping this letter would go and it could be handed to them, but I would also read it in front of them, just to make sure our position is known.
Okay, well, they'll only give you probably about a minute, but so several of us can get together and hit the key points.
Okay.
But I want to go as representatives of the town council, not as
Is it-
citizens.
When,
So-
Wednesday?
Yes.
Okay.
At
1 p.m.
1
I
o'clock.
believe,
It's up here?
in Lancaster.
Yes, in Antelope Valley. So I think, do we need to vote on sending one or more representatives to speak these points?
If we're only gonna get a few minutes and a few of us went, we could all take a,
Yep,
you
I
know, a
think
couple of
so.
paragraphs and read through it.
So I move that we send as many representatives of town council to
Whoever
represent
shows up, yeah.
Well, I was, already,
as representatives of the town council.
yes, I was definitely going as that.
Well, we have to, the town council has to vote to agree to have to do that.
You do?
Yeah.
Oh,
It's kind of
You can't
borderline.
speak for the town council unless the town council
Well,
authorizes you to
you
speak.
can, but it's a fine line. All you can speak about, if you're there as a town council member, you can say, I'm saying this on behalf of the town council, or this is the town council's position, as long as you're 100%, we'll go back on, I think, did this last time, 100% sure that that is the town council's position. But any answer to any questions that may stray from the exact position, you can't. So it's much better if we send someone.
Yeah, we always vote
voice
to
it.
send
Well,
someone.
yeah.
well, that's fine. I mean,
So
I'm good with it, the more the merrier.
Somebody else
So.
wants a second?
Well, when we discussed it before, in that, when you were there that night that we were discussing that, and there were some of the town councils that thought that they have to go back and talk to their other people in the town council before they did anything, and I said that in our case, that everybody that's on our council wouldn't have a problem with it, because that's what, they send you for that reason.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
And once this is sent, we have a clear stated position that any council member can speak on and quote that.
Well, that's for high-speed rail.
I know, but I mean, this is
Okay,
just an
yeah,
example.
Yeah, exactly. So Susan's not gonna get a lot of time to talk either, so the more people who can come to bring up these various elements.
Okay, so who would like to go? Who else can make it?
But if I can't guarantee right now.
I would like to go, but right now, I'm so darn busy. When was the date on that?
It's this Wednesday at 1 p.m.
1 o'clock in the
Middle of the day.
afternoon.
Probably won't be able to make it.
I can't either.
Okay.
I would like to go, but
That's how many speakers there are.
Well, I'll read as fast as I can.
Where's
Or
the
whatever
room
you
at?
fit.
At Antelope Valley, it's right, I have,
Okay.
give me a minute, I'll look it up. Yeah. But other than that, I don't have anything on planning and, I'm done with mine, so you can go on and I'll get the address.
All right.
We vote?
Now for the exciting update. Pam had a fantastic weekend. Culmination. of
We had
hard work.
a really successful spaghetti dinner fundraiser for our high-speed rail efforts, and Sandy was not able to make it here tonight. She was actually, Sandy Manson was the chairperson of it, I was her assistant, but it was super successful. I think we had between 225 and 250 people there. Our accounting is not done yet, but we did really well on our raffles, very well on our silent auction, 50-50. And the highlight of the whole night was that all these people from Hanford came down to support us, because obviously we were raising money for their lawsuit. And I just want to read you a brief little email. I got several of them from those people after they left, and they had a 3.5-hour drive to go back home. Dear Pam, Sandy, Jackie, and the wonderful community of Acton, thank you for all of your hard work and a wonderful time in Acton last night. It was truly a night to remember. You are all part of a beautiful community with so much heart and soul. We are all honored by everyone's hospitality. What a warm welcome, and some of the best spaghetti I ever have eaten. This has been a very busy week for all of you, so may all of you have a blessed and restful Sunday. Yes, I needed that. May God bless each of you and your families also. And I got, more of them from other people in our community. Our community is very impressed, and I'm impressed that we had Acton and Agua Dulce came together beautifully for this event, and we made money. I just can't tell you exactly what it is right now. We still haven't paid our bills. The banking has been done, but the bills aren't done. So that was beautiful, and I hope that whatever else we do as a fundraiser in this community, that we see that kind of support. It took a lot of people to put the event on, from the women's club doing the cooking, to our high school students that were our service club, our junior high students that did the cleanup, to husbands and wives and family. We all pulled our families in and said, okay, you're doing chairs and tables and you're doing decorating. Jackie and Beth, I don't know Beth, but Beth Katz did a really super job. Everybody was very impressed. The other part of our wonderful high-speed rail thing, our fight, Genevieve called me today, as she called Chris, and in response to all the permits.
And you are with Rite Aid itself, or are you the architect?
We are not. My name is Ed Horovitz, partners Matt Stowe. We're with RDS Partners. We're the principals in the company.
Okay.
Been a real estate developer for almost 25 years, and I'll continue after the rest of it. We specialize in retail development only. Again, we've been doing almost 25 years. Our association with Rite Aid is we would be the developer, they would be the tenant, and...
So you guys will hold title to the property, the building, you're going to develop it out, and then they'll sign a long-term lease with you.
Correct. We're currently under contract with Panda Express people to buy their entire parcel. Rite Aid has a lot of significant data that they're reviewing. They actually go to real estate committee.
The entire parcel?
Yes, sir.
Leaving nothing to Panda?
That's correct.
How many acres was that again? Was that like 2 point, almost 3?
We're developing about 1.5 acres of it, and the total thing is about 3.5 acres.
Okay.
And what are you doing with the rest of it?
I have no plans or anything with it, and to be perfectly upfront, I don't see a lot of viability for any other commercial development with the rest of it. I think the only viable piece is the piece that's right at the corner on Crown Valley and the freeway.
Did you buy, are you looking then at the small lot to the west of the Panda lot? Because Panda was only about 2.2 acres.
Yeah, that's what I remember.
And so there's a small hunk of land that's maybe 0.5 or 6 acres further west of it. Is that, that's fine.
I do not believe it is. We have an ALTA survey that we completed and finished, and I'm happy to share that, send it by email, or if we take a look at exactly what we're going to be under contract for. I probably should have brought that survey tonight, but the developable parcel is about 1.5 acres. We met with Mike Hughes about 2 months ago to briefly discuss our plans, and...
You called me.
I beg your pardon?
Did we meet?
We met at McDonald's for a few minutes.
Okay.
But I just want to greatly appreciate, and want to take a meet for a few minutes, discuss in general, and get us together at the meeting this evening. As I mentioned, we're under contract to purchase the entire parcel from the Panda Express people, and our site will be about 1.5 acres. We've met with the county land use development and are not asking land use for any variance on any item. Not asking for a variance on any parking, any density, any signage, building heights, or any landscaping. As a matter of fact, the landscaping we're proposing on the site is about 22%, which is about twice what the standard landscape requirement is for commercial development. We have read and believe we're pretty familiar with Acton Town Council's Acton Development Community Standards. We certainly have and understand that those community standards are going to be updated and going to be implemented, and believe that our current development has incorporated those standards in both site work and the buildings. The building addressed elevations, design a western frontier look with features all in these earth tone colors. The landscaping will use native drought-resistant plants, shrubs, and trees with the native rock planters. Some site amenities will include an equestrian hitching and rest area on the east side of the property with drinking and water facilities. The equestrian trail along our east property line will be put in and installed, tying in access to the north and the south of the property. Any building or site lighting will be incorporated in the western frontier style. I do not have any fixtures on those, and items like that, Matt and I are completely open to see what the town council would recommend. Another property, we see obviously what's here in the parking lot, and open to doing that. We're proposing a single drive-through lane with no menu board, no speaker system of any type, or any type of canopy or structure going over the drive-through. Typically, that canopy or structure over that single drive-through is what identifies it and people relate to, and that's not the case, and not what we're proposing or what we would present forward for development. A little bit of information, knowing the sensitivity of drive-throughs with the council and with Acton in general. The average number of cars in a Rite Aid for the drive-through is between 3 to 4 cars an hour. The drive-through is not established for the sale or use or purchase of any general merchandise. The only one that will be using that drive-through is someone who has a prescription at the Rite Aid. It is typically identified for 2 users. The elderly who do not want to get out of the car and can pull up to that window, assuming they have a prescription, and either a sick mother or father as a single parent with kids that are in the car want to pull up and get that prescription. That really is a specific use. An average fast food runs anywhere between 35 and 45 cars an hour, and again, typically our Rite Aids nationwide in the larger stores, and I'll go over that in a minute, run between 3 and 4 cars an hour. But again, I wanted to emphasize that drive-through is specifically for those 2 users. If I want to buy a bag of ice or I want to get a soda, you can't use the drive-through for any general merchandise sales. We're here tonight to review the major components of the development and review those with town council. Most importantly, seeking Acton's comments. Here for any questions and requesting your support before we even go and submit the plans to the Planning Commission. We would like to get comments, answer any questions, and see if I can address further any concerns either on the site or on the building or anything in general to the development. As I say again, we're currently under contract. We don't own the land, and knowing the past history and the difficulty of any type of commercial development, Matt and I tried to do our homework, incorporate what the standards we're looking for, and try and seek comments, answer questions, and see if there's further input we can do to make, in fact, the project that we think will be viable, something the community will be proud of and will accept it.
What's the square footage of your building?
I beg your pardon?
Square footage of the building?
The building, thank you for asking. And the building's about 10,500 square feet.
Oh.
A typical Rite Aid and all of the new constructions are about 17,600. It's about a 40% smaller building than what Rite Aid had originally proposed and would have liked to put on the site. Yes, sir.
One comment, this is Mr. Matt. I already had one call from one pharmacist who had Rite Aid come into their facility and say, oh, we're going to open this already, it's a done deal, council's already
conversation. In fact, what the conversation was, we believe, and we're happy to talk to the pharmacist, was the Rite Aid purchase of that pharmacy had already been approved in corporate to proceed with the funds to purchase it. In no way, and I cannot speak for the individual back in the pharmacy department, back on the East Coast, what exactly he said, but when we got a hold of the head of the entire real estate development, which is Ray Payne, channels real estate to the entire United States, said that's clearly what was not said. Not being privy to the conversation, I can't stand here and vouch for anything more than that.
To be clear, what had happened was the pharmacy acquisition representative for Rite Aid was telling the pharmacist that their pharmacy had been approved for purchase, not that the project had been approved, that he's been approved to move forward and try to purchase their pharmacy, that your specific pharmacy has been approved.
Talking about Crown Valley Pharmacy?
We have two pharmacies.
Yeah,
I think it's the one right here across from the next thing we got.
Yeah, the pharmacist's name started with a T, I can't remember it.
I got a heated phone call from him too. It's in the middle
We're happy to have the Rite Aid real estate representatives, they contact you to explain that position. It was not.
So what they was basically was saying that they had been approved to purchase their pharmacy,
Your pharmacy has been approved by Rite Aid for us to approach you to purchase
even
it.
though maybe they didn't know they wanted to sell it.
of.
Rite Aid will go into any of their developments the same as Walgreens, the same as Save-On. They evaluate the competition, they look who's there, and they often, if not almost always, go into that individual real owner of that prescriptions and say we're interested in buying your property. There's no obligation. The price typically is pretty well a higher price than what you would find in the open market to sell his business, because Rite Aid, doing what they want to do, want to have the majority of the prescriptions at that facility.
And just to clarify something, the pharmacist that had contacted you and me, who knows, he's not the owner. He had told me that he's been the pharmacist there, working there for 10 years, but he was not the owner of that business. And that was, so I think it was kind of one of those things like, what do you mean this place is sold? Am I losing my job? So yeah, it could stir up some issues.
And appreciate that. We apologize for that. It's not in control. Matt and I have nothing to do with those conversations. Corporate handles though. I'm not passing the buck. It shouldn't happen, but we believe that's how it was handled, and probably could have handled it better.
Well, I think speaking openly and I appreciate the fact that it's smaller than normal Rite Aid. When I saw 10,000 feet, I said, yeah, it does seem a little smaller than most of the pharmacies that are out there. And I think the design is a good, maybe first go around at a Western design. I see a lot of block there. Our concerns is that Rite Aids not only sell pharmaceuticals, they also sell ice, water, sodas, toys.
Right.
And one of the things that we really like in our community is we do have these smaller stores, and I don't know if protecting them is the proper terminology, but we don't want to lose the feel of this small town to the big boxes. And it's the old Walmart syndrome. Walmart comes in and everyone says it's horrible that they're there, we hate Walmart, and then secretly I think there was a cartoon, everyone's shopping there at 1 in the morning so none of their neighbors see them because they can go in and save 50 cents on stuff. So, that's one of our concerns, and this isn't a huge box store, but it's much bigger than most of the businesses out here. So that could be an issue, and for all of us, and just, I don't know if you saw the go-around that we had with the medical pharmacy, is when it comes to large decisions, we vote not what we personally feel, but it's what the community wants. And
yes, sir.
Lillian has been tremendous in helping get the word out to find out exactly what the community wants. This may be another one of those times where we might want to.
I don't think there's any maybe about it. I personally don't think we should be saying anything at all until this is on the agenda, and the community can come and see this.
Well,
So we actually have a piece of paper we can look at and take home and study. I can't.
I'm not saying yes or no or
Yeah,
any votes. I'm just giving some
No, I
information.
appreciate that. And I'm not saying
Give it
you
to
are.
suggestions.
I'm just making my position very clear.
Absolutely.
So,
By the way, Jackie usually does
Are
that.
those documents
so
available on
don't,
the
it is not
website?
reflecting on your comments.
Okay.
The documents to use to present to the council, because I couldn't access
No,
it.
not quite yet.
Okay.
It started, but it's not cleaned up.
Okay,
We all
I just
got to
wanna
look
make
at
sure
it
it
before it
wasn't
goes
me.
public, yeah. No, they're all made, but we need to kind of look at
make sure we like them before we pop them up. So.
Now, just as a clarification again from my point, what the council is empowered to do is speak for the community, but is also to speak on zoning land use issues primarily. Say if a property were zoned and defined land use for a specific reason, and we had hundreds of people in here saying, we don't want this particular business here because Aunt Martha owns this business, we couldn't really say as a council, we oppose that business because Aunt Martha is too valuable to us.
Absolutely.
But on legal grounds, we can, and we can also choose not to make a statement, and then the community itself can make a statement, which they have many times in the past made that.
Recent past.
Yes, recent past.
Although maybe I'm not understanding what you're saying, but I don't believe that the town council is supposed to speak for the community. Town council is supposed to communicate what the community's feelings and beliefs and what they want to the county. And I believe that's what it says clearly in our bylaws.
Also, we are
they're two different things.
Two different things, but also one of our main purposes here is to represent the community's voice as shown in the Community Standards District Ordinance and the new area-wide plan. Represent that to developers, potential developers that come in. And if something meets all those requirements, and then it's just Aunt Ethel that is the concern,
then the county's going to step on it.
Right.
You know. But if this entire community comes in and says, we want you to protect Aunt Ethel and take that position to the county, then that's what our bylaws say we have to do.
Well,
Not that that's going to happen.
Right.
It's gonna happen, Aunt Ethel.
But I also appreciate the position that,
Yes.
it's not what these gentlemen have done, but that Rite Aid has come in and either
Yeah.
they've already executed it or they're offering to buy out another
Yeah.
business rather than drive another business out of business. I
absolutely.
think
They
that's,
understand that.
I think that's a bad thing, and we do have one other pharmacy in town, but that is a higher road to take.
Well, I agree. I'm not making any comments on this, other than pointing out.
Two things, but maybe we did not anticipate or think for 1 minute tonight we were getting a yay or a nay.
Right.
We were hoping we wouldn't get out of here and don't come back again. That said,
That's what these people say.
that said, we believe that the way to go forward with this development and make it successful is to adhere to all of the standards, ensure that the zoning meets, all the setbacks meet, and that's why I want to make it clear in my opening that we are not requesting any type of variance to zoning, any type of variance for noise. I mean, we're pretty familiar with the development code and in the county. Asking for variance is often done and often achieved. That said, we're not asking to do any of that. And in addition, we're willing to and want to incorporate whatever town council's development and their standards are into the building, into the site completely.
Have you submitted a site plan yet then?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. We didn't think that was the right way to do it. We thought we should come to you all first, get your comments, get your input, see if we can incorporate it. We think we have as far as the building design and the site layout, certainly setbacks. We understand the difficulty of the drive-through, and I wanted to point those issues out.
But the drive-through is an artifact of the freeway serving purpose of the drive-through. So it's.
Yes, ma'am, but typically
I'm just
that,
explaining what the community's always, it has nothing to do with your design, just the artifact falls out of the freeway serving concerns for commercial.
yes, ma'am, and
businesses.
part of our challenge will be to educate the community on something like the drive-through. People that do not live in Acton with prescription are not getting off the freeway to use the drive-through.
But it's the size of the building, the size of the, are you gonna be selling alcohol?
We're going to ask for a
Yeah,
CUP,
that-
which will have to be
That will
approved.
be another very high hurdle for here because as our deputy is raising his hand back in the back.
I'm not trying to block it. I'm not.
Freeway close and alcohol.
You have a junior high school right across the street, you have a liquor store at AM PM, you have one at Shell, you have a liquor bar, you have another liquor store, you have 76. They sell beer, wine,
There
hard
are,
liquors.
We've had a problem with that before.
the average of what is considered acceptable by both the ATF and the county already in this community. And they do it by population census.
Yes,
So in this census, it's,
And they've already made that statement well known, those agencies have. So that will be a very, very high hurdle that you may not ever get over.
Understand, and we understand it's a CUP process. It can be political and a lot of public commentary, and then we get to check, say, the actual census criteria saying too many in the area already, not going to happen, or you can't.
And just
All those
aside,
come to my office in this area for approval, so I'll be
well,
saying.
what they say,
Understand.
if there's too many, they say they'll limit to 5% of the limit, but there's still an enormous discretionary component of that. And,
If I were a betting man, I would bet that you would not get any authorization for liquor.
ooh, Mike, that's a big thing to say.
Understand, I appreciate it, Mike, you've been straightforward with us, and
My
we
opinion,
appreciate that.
and there may be a way to do it, but I think, as I say, a very, very high hurdle for you.
Okay.
And that's just my personal opinion.
Are all drive-throughs on Rite Aid just for prescriptions only?
Yes, sir. I'm not suggesting that they don't have somebody come through there that think they're gonna buy a bag of ice. They're not allowed to even sell it. They're not, and that pharmacist is there only if you already have an existing prescription. So you can't pull up there and say, I wanna fill my asthma prescription again. You can't. It has to already been filled, called in, and verified for all the other stuff before you use it. That's why the use is so small.
What percentage of their sales is liquor?
I don't have the answer. I can get it for you. So you know, because that's one of the things we want to try and do tonight is get some of the concerns out on the table again. We're not here to try and get a project approved. We understand the process, we understand the zoning, understand where we are.
I think we really need a survey in the paper.
Well, before we do it again, are liquor sales mandatory, so if you don't get a liquor license, then the project is dead?
We certainly don't make real estate committee approvals. Real estate will tell us without approval, they probably won't go in. Will they go in without it? Matt and I couldn't tell you, because they go back to real estate committee on a national deal with a number of opportunities. Rite Aid in the last year and a half has really been doing well. I mean, as we all know, we're an aging community. The prescriptions are important. The front end stuff is important to them. Whether or not they'll proceed with or without a liquor license, Matt and I couldn't tell you.
Here's my suggestion, because I have
Yes,
a
ma'am.
number of questions that I'm not going to ask because the community's not here. So, do you have any handouts that we can give to the press so they can publish it in the paper and in the AED news and give to us to look at and put it on the agenda and then proceed down that path?
Happy to do that. I don't bring them tonight. We can get them by email to you, Tom, if you're the guy. We'll be happy to get them by email to you.
I emailed you the package, exactly what we're presenting tonight.
I may have, and I can forward that to the rest of the council.
Or